On June 2, 1997, the senior year students of Napa High School went to Waterworld, USA in Concord, California. It was their end-of-year trip, and for many, a significant milestone. The last time they would all be able to spend time together before leaving for college, work, and their adult lives. However, due to a prank that went wrong, this day would become memorable for hundreds of people in a completely different and tragic way. Waterworld USA had opened its doors in 1995 with a number of attractions, including Northern California's longest lazy river and the only large wave pool in the region. The attractions were designed to provide entertainment for a wide range of visitors, with shallow pools and play areas for children, complemented by larger, taller, and more extreme water slides for teenagers and adults. For several years, the park operated without major incidents. Accidents were rare, and the attractions were well maintained, with new additions and improvements made every few years. The park had built a reputation as an excellent family outing, especially appreciated due to its proximity to its sister park, Waterworld Sacramento, as well as the wildlife-themed Park Marine World Africa, USA. Locals could purchase a season pass for all three attractions, which were managed by the same company, at least until the late 1990s. Waterworld USA had a lot to offer, and perhaps this is why, in 1997, it was chosen as the destination for the Napa High School senior class trip. The school was located about an hour north of the park. Every year, graduating students organized a class trip, and it was almost always to a water park. In previous years, they had visited Manteca water slides, but in 1997, it was decided that the trip would be to Waterworld USA instead. Over the years, a tradition had developed among the students. Toward the end of the day, when the risk of being kicked out of the park was lower, they would all gather at one of the largest water slides and attempt to slide down together. To do this, one student would enter the slide but quickly stop themselves by bracing against the sides, blocking the passage. Their friends would then follow, piling up behind them. Once enough students had accumulated, those in front would let go, sending the entire group down in a chaotic and exhilarating ride, surrounded by friends, with a massive splash at the end. Napa High students called this practice clogging, and by 1997, it had become a slightly competitive tradition. Each senior class would try to clog a slide with more people than the previous class. The record in 1996, set at Manteca water slides, was over 60 students on a single slide. Teachers and chaperones were aware of this tradition, and while they did not necessarily approve, they made it clear to students that they would not be punished for it. It was seen as a prank, against the rules but essentially harmless. The adults supervising the trip preferred to tolerate it rather than risk ruining the outing by trying to forbid it. June 2, 1997, was a relatively quiet day at Waterworld USA, but the weather was warm and pleasant, and the Napa High students were enjoying a day of fun and relaxation with their friends. Throughout the day, there was talk of clogging a slide, but it was generally agreed that this would be done at the very end of the visit to minimize the risk of expulsion. Thus, when an announcement was made around 2:30 p.m. asking Napa High students to return to their buses, dozens of them instead headed for the Bonsai Pipeline Slide Complex. This 131-foot, 40-meter tall tower featured 4 slides of varying intensity. Lifeguards were stationed at the top to supervise the riders. Several students pushed past a lifeguard and entered a slide together, before quickly stopping by bracing against the fiberglass walls. Their friends followed, piling up behind them. At first, it was a joyful, celebratory activity. These were friends who had studied together for years. They were ecstatic about pulling off one final memorable prank before their high school days ended. More and more students joined in, pushing past the lifeguard at the top of the tower. The lifeguard blew their whistle and shouted at them not to block the slide, warning that it was dangerous. The students ignored the warning, prompting the lifeguard to pick up their radio and call park security. When about 30 people had crammed into the slide, a loud cracking sound was heard. The fiberglass of the slide tore. The bolts securing it to the structure pulled through the tear, and an entire section of the slide, the most heavily loaded part, collapsed like a trapdoor. Dozens of students tumbled down, crashing onto bare concrete or into flower beds below. Some hit the supports of the slide on the way down. A few managed to hold on for a brief moment before falling. Alinda Franco, who survived the fall, later described the accident. The sound of fiberglass cracking is burned into my mind forever. I remember starting to fall and trying to grab onto something. It felt like the platform was just an arm's length away, but I couldn't reach it. As soon as I felt myself falling, my brain shut off. The ground was instantly littered with injured teenagers. Blood contaminated the ride splash pool as park staff rushed to the scene. The number of injuries, and the severity of each, was overwhelming. Emergency services were called, and a steady flow of ambulances transported 32 injured teenagers to local hospitals. There were so many victims that no single facility could accommodate them all, forcing some students to be taken farther away. The principal of Napa High, Lars Christensen, was informed and immediately rushed to the park. He found the road blocked, with access restricted to emergency vehicles. He had to abandon his car on a nearby highway and run the rest of the way to the park. There he discovered a nightmare scene. Even an hour after the accident, students were still waiting for transport to the hospital. But what shocked him the most was when the police asked him to identify a body. 18-year-old Quimby Galati had suffered fatal injuries. She had been an outstanding student, recently awarded a college scholarship to study psychology. The accident forever changed the lives of the Napa High students, serving as a reminder that a simple prank can have irreversible consequences.